I seem to have this thing these days with the little icons. It doesn't seem to matter what it is. I always seem to miss it. Just miss it for some reason. Maybe I'm getting old. Maybe I'm too much of a boomer. I don't know. But welcome to the stream, folks. We'll try that again. How many years have I been doing this shit and I still get it wrong? But there you go. This is how it is. On today's stream, I've got laughing in my ears. We got our basically we got our moderator from the channel, Kerri, on the stream today, and I'm going to bring her in just a moment. Yes, as I was saying, it's been really quite busy lately. I've been working on the hardware review and all that kind of stuff. So, and I feel like I'm telling you something you already know. You haven't heard a fucking word, but there you go. Yes, it's quite a difficult one to write about in some respects, and it's to do with kind of how the film is put together and what it's actually doing and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to try to put into the review without me kind of going around in circles. So I'm sort of just trying to work on that kind of stuff because I want this to be a good one. Because it's a film that I particularly respect. But yes, without further ado, I'm going to just bring Kerri in, and what I'm going to do is, and there we go, and there's Kerri. Hello, Kerri.
Hello, all.
Yeah, you got the first part of that chat of me yakking away to myself.
Yes.
So I wasn't completely alone.
No, I was laughing because, well, it was funny.
So welcome to everybody who's here. Hello, Adam. Hello, Simon. MD Chaos. Hello. Silent Glen, yes, it's kind of like the poor man's version of Silent Hill. So
hopefully without the witches.
Yeah. Let me know that just everyone can hear Kerri okay, because I've had to set everything up just recently, and just speak to me for a second, Kerri. Just make sure it's actually registering.
Okay.
Yep.
Hope you're all well.
Yep.
And hello, Simon. Hello, Adam. Hello, Iris. Hello, MD. Who else is in? That's all we can see. So yeah, hello all.
So I mean, this has been long waiting for you to have your return to the channel, and it's very nice to have you back again.
Thank you.
I'm always a bit lazy when it comes to having guests on, just because it's there's a certain amount of, shall we say, fucking around. I think is probably a fairly good word.
That would be accurate term, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of messing about trying to kind of get things sorted. Fortunately, I don't have to be tied to my computer anymore. I've got these really posh headphones now, and latency free and everything. So it doesn't. If I'm speaking to someone like Kerri, it doesn't feel like it's a kung fu movie and it's being kind of ADR'd, which is quite nice.
That is nice because I can hear you really well too. Although I couldn't. I had to use. I upgraded to Windows 11 recently, and I thought my headphones needed driver updates and all that, so I checked, and they're all up to date. I was like, "What's wrong?"
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? It's like, why do headphones need them?
Switched around, so.
Why do headphones need fucking driver updates?
Oh, I know. That is technology.
Should be easy. It's like all these goddamn subscriptions and stuff.
Well,
dear.
There is that, but thankfully it's sorted now.
I'm talking to subscriptions and that kind of stuff. I was looking at getting that Rocksmith Plus until I saw the bloody price of it. But yeah, I thought there was a couple of them. I can't remember if I showed you all of these, but I picked up "I Miss You, Hugs and Kisses" on Blu-ray, and Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker as well. Which I'm really I haven't watched Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker this copy, but I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I also picked up a copy of Suspiria on Blu-ray.
Cool.
It's quite a nice edition of it as well. It's got a commentary I think it's got a commentary with Dario Argento on it, which would be kind of neat. So what have you been picking up?
Well, I have been a bit more mainstream, I suppose, compared to everything else. Oma. It's from 2004. It's about the Oma bombing in 1998 and how Martin Gallagher fought for justice for his family.
It's my birth town.
Cool, right? Very good. Salute of the Jugger, cult classic, which has been on my wish list for, well, forever. And it was €6 in Kex, but can't say no to that. Another one on my wish list, The Cement Garden by Andrew Birkin, but Ian McEwan novel based on that. One of the weirdest movies ever.
Really? What's weird about it? What's weird about it?
What's weird about it? Well, let's just say there's mum and dad die suddenly, kids become feral. The two oldest kids start to have a relationship with each other.
Oh, wow.
Just a normal garden stuff.
It sounds more freaky than weird, but yeah, I mean,
well, freaky, weird, yeah.
There's a film I've got to revisit again at some point, which is Mockingbird Don't Sing, and it's about this feral child. It gets locked up in the basement of her parents' basement.
That's Harry Bromley Danforth, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
That's on YouTube.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've got it on DVD somewhere, but obviously all my DVDs are buried. But so you got all yours in your boxes behind you.
Yeah, well, I didn't have it a couple of years ago when we moved down here. I had to get the boxes. Next was Poor Things. The latest, well, not the latest, the second to latest, Yorgos Lanthimos, aka the new David Lynch, in my opinion. Heaven's Gate extended edition, so it's 3 hours 36 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's going to be a sitting and a half. Next we have The Ascent, Larissa Shepko, Russian movie. Oh, sorry, Shepetko. It's about soldiers during World War II.
I've always struggled a little bit with Russian cinema. I've always struggled a little bit with Russian cinema.
Oh, right, okay.
Not because I think it's bad or anything, but it's got a pace and a quality to it, which is always a little bit ponderous feeling.
I think that would probably stems from, the atmosphere and the climate politically.
Yeah, possibly.
Because Tarkovsky was the same.
Yeah. Tarkovsky in particular I was thinking of. And I can't remember the name of the film, but it was one film I fell asleep to in film studies class.
Oh.
I was tired anyway, but it was just this thing. Oh my god!
That might have been Solaris.
That was hard work, Solaris. I mean, it's a good film
Yeah.
and all, but yeah, it takes a bit of patience.
It does, yeah. Next, La Règle de Jeu, a French movie from 1937. I also love French cinema of all eras, so.
I just picked up Leo Carac's, I probably pronounced that wrong, box set, which has 4 of the films included. It means I've got a duplicate of Holy Motors, but if you can have a duplicate of any film, that's not a bad one to have a duplicate of.
No, that's freaky and weird.
Yeah, I love that film. It's one of my favourites, all-time favourites. It's just such an adorable film. Hello, Paul. And hello, Spike. I didn't acknowledge it. You were here.
Yes, Simon, that did bankrupt MGM for a while. And maybe that's why it was so long, because they put more money into it than they should have done. Then Perfect Days, the new Wim Wenders movie, still sealed.
Oh, very nice.
I haven't got around to watching it yet. It was actually shown in our local community centre a few weeks ago. Which is weird because they don't normally show movies.
I was going to say, how is that as a viewing experience watching it in something which is not? I assume it's not a purpose-built theatre.
Well, initially it was a cinema/theatre.
Right. Okay.
Initially, then a new, bigger, better cinema then got built in Bundoran the next town over. And Bundoran's more of a tourist town, so it took a lot of tourists, when people went to the more modern. So it's called the Abbey Centre, and that then became more of like a theatre/bingo hall.
Okay.
But they still got a projector in the back rooms and stuff.
Mm.
They kind of show movies that way, but I didn't get to see Perfect Days at the time. But they do show more independent art house cinema,
Okay.
which is really, really good, because if you like myself, like who like different rather than mainstream stuff, it's really, really good.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, when it comes to like the histories of cinemas and stuff like that, when films became a thing, I mean, they were basically touring road shows, so they were kind of popping up in like working men's clubs and town halls and things like that. So it's a very much more traditional experience in some respects.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, because like I think capacity was a couple of hundred people. Back in the day, now it's probably around 50. So, but the theater itself is, when the performances are on, they have their original capacity. But the cinema itself, as I said, it's the facilities are there, but it's not used as a cinema. So, on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, MD Chaos says Glenn's drinking that good shit. Yes, I've got good beer on the go today. East Coast IPA.
Cool. I'm on the hard stuff. Sparkling water and blackcurrant juice.
Wow, you're steady on you.
Yes. Two I mentioned earlier a couple of weeks ago. They're Tundas King or Todas King.
Yeah.
And Schramm, both by Jörg Buttgereit, German director. Well, the Todas King is more like a vignette series of vignettes. It's all about the power of cult. Because there's the letters go out to 7 people over 7 days and basically urges them to kill themselves. Nice stuff.
That's very cheerful.
Yeah, very cheerful, but it's very stylish. And Schramm is basically a serial killer, and he doesn't think he's a serial killer, but he is.
How does he not realise that?
No, well, the thing is, he thinks he's doing the work of the people, like killing all the undesirables, but
right, okay.
That's my collects. So altogether about 5, 10. So not bad for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I keep having to be a little careful about how much I pick up because I haven't got much room left at the moment. But,
yeah, I need to get shelves up.
yeah, I miss having my video collection. Well, that shows how old I am. My movie collection, I like to have it on shelves where I can actually see and access them a lot easier instead of having to root through a bunch of boxes. But there you go.
Indeed, boxes behind me and all.
Yes.
16 boxes.
Yeah, a bit more accessible than what I've got at the moment. But yeah. So you had a thought about what you wanted to talk about tonight. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's a couple of things. First thing is superhero fatigue in terms of movies. Now, we all know that the MCU and the latter DCEU were movie juggernauts. But the thing is, people are getting sick of superhero movies, and I'm definitely one of them, even though I love them. I just think Marvel itself, and by extension Disney, they're just milking too much from people.
But they have gone down the road of, well, I mean, they've always had franchises. They've made even the most ridiculous things into franchises, be it like kind of a standalone film that they've just gone and made spin-offs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, call Disney what it is at the end of the day. It's a big factory, essentially.
Yes.
But when it comes to the superhero films, the MCU in particular, obviously the MCU didn't start with Disney. It was it was
Paramount.
Paramount, yeah, and then Disney bought it up.
Yeah.
And it was
technically it kind of started off with, New Line actually, what you'd call modern Marvel, with Blade, 98.
Yeah. But I wouldn't call that part of the MCU, though, if you know what I mean.
No, pre-MCU, and then X-Men got massive, and Kevin Feige was part of that production team.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, okay, if X-Men, who are kind of a fringe Marvel superhero group.
Mm-hmm.
If they can pull big numbers, we can maybe do something.
Mm.
So they started with a loan. The MCU started with a loan from some rich dude anyway, and they made Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, and Iron Man 2, and then after that, they said, okay, let's make a whole universe of movies.
It's kind of interesting though, isn't it? Because where it started, and when you look back at it, and I'll put my cards on the table and I say I liked pretty much everything up until Endgame.
Okay.
And after that chapter of the story sort of finished, I've not really paid much attention to it. The only one I've got after that was probably Multiverse of Madness. But when it started out, it was very fragmented. There was ideas there. You could see that they were trying to potentially kind of make something bigger. Certainly when it came to Iron Man, much less than Hulk.
I think with Iron Man being a success, and then Universal did Incredible Hulk because they had the rights to Incredible Hulk, and then Iron Man 2 2 years later, then they decided to bring the Avengers together, and so they made separate Thor, Captain America, blah blah blah. But Phase 4 and 5 definitely have gone downhill. And I think a large part of that is not just superhero fatigue, but also Disney. There's always talk about they're ticking boxes for diversity, but the reality is that they're, as MD Chaos has said, they're oversaturated the market. Disney Plus, you could only access the TV shows via that. Now you can get them on Blu-ray 4K. Overpressure from physical media collectors that why can't. But if you consider MCU has 30-something movies, 34 this year now with Deadpool, and 16 years. That's 2 a year on average. And it never used to be like that. It used to be maybe Superman and Superman 2 2 years later. It used to be kind of more of a gap. And that's what I think people are, sick of, because there's been movie, and then break, movie, break, TV show, movie, break, TV show.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing, isn't it? Because they've expanded into the TV series as well for various different characters. It seems to be something of a shift for them in general, because there's a lot less films coming out, and now there's a lot more TV series coming out.
I think with Bob Iger, the new head of Disney, he was shrewd, or has been shrewd now. Like, we'll just do 1 or 2 TV shows and 1 movie, 2 movies tops a year. Like the new Deadpool is, out this week coming, and that's the only movie for this year.
I think it's probably the only one I'm actually interested in watching as well.
Me too, actually. I love Deadpool, the character, and what he does.
It'll be interesting to see how Disney handle that, just because of the nature of Deadpool and the films so far, to see whether or not they've actually kind of forced any watering down of it, because it's super violent and there's lots of swearing and sex.
They're meant to be having it as the very first 18 cert, or 15 at least, cert MCU movie.
Oh, I can't imagine it'd be an 18. Just
well, here's 15. I don't know about elsewhere, but here's 15.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be a 15, just because they want to make money. The thing is, if it was an 18, they'd struggle to distribute it in America.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah, which would be kind of interesting to see Disney up against the MPAA.
Well, they did plan to kind of release a Cannibal Holocaust.
Blue Iris says, I saw a video today that suggested Wes Craven took Nightmare on Elm Street to Disney first. Caesar did a PG-13, so he went to New Line. But Disney first for a horror?
Well, the Black Cauldron was kind of considered horror.
Well, I mean, early Disney, a lot of older Disney had horror kind of overtones to it, or at least horrific content in some to some degree or another. Even up to the Lion King.
Though.
Yeah.
Like Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. Very much like like obviously animated, and it would be like there was no threat. So, but it was fantastical violence. The
Yeah.
themes were a bit more hard hitting than.
Well, I mean, they tackled everything for like kind of,
Yeah,
all the good stuff right through to the bad stuff, including death. I mean, you look at something like Bambi.
yeah.
It's so many people cite that as one of the most traumatic things that they watched as a child. For me, it's probably Watership Down, and maybe
That is a traumatic movie, all right, I agree. Yeah.
maybe E.T. to an extent.
What was that, sorry?
Maybe E.T. to an extent as well. That upset me as a child. Yeah, well, because it does play on the emotions. I don't mean upset me in a kind of like, oh my god, I wish I hadn't watched that kind of thing, but certainly in terms of because watching it when it first came out, which is what 82ish.
Yeah.
It's like 10 years old, and it's got moments, got very emotional moments in it.
Well, admittedly, I only saw it for the first time as an adult about 4 years ago.
And there used to be a very experimental as well. You had films like Tron as a good example.
Love
Tron, I strongly believe is a film that only Disney could have made, because the expense and the experiments and the fact that it's so heavily reliant on a form of animation. They're probably the only people who had the money and the understanding of what it would take to actually make that movie, the time, the processes, the technical innovations that would have to be made. And you kind of wonder where that Disney went, really, when you see the stuff you got these days.
Oh god, yeah. The stuff today, like, it's so cutie and it's just it's no I don't know what, there's no backbone to it.
Yeah, I mean, they go on about kind of things like, this is a live animation, a live action version of the Lion King and all that kind of stuff with the CG animals, and however impressive it might seem, it's this is one of the things. It's very difficult, I think, these days for cinema to be truly innovative in terms of technology, because now it's much more incremental. It's not like when Tron was made and CG was an absolutely brand new technology out of the box, and they had to kind of augment it with more traditional style animation techniques and that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, now we can animate every hair on the lion's mane and that kind of stuff. You sort of go, yeah, who gives a shit?
But there's not also only lack of technical innovation. There's also lack of originality in storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for all cinema, really.
Yeah, Simon says Tron bored me senseless. I struggled to understand what was going on. Right, I'll give you my brief summary of what Tron is. Tron is not really a film about being sucked into a computer. It's essentially a copyright dispute, is what's going on in that film. That's exactly what. It's so ironic that Disney would have that as a storyline. It's unreal. But that is essentially what it is. He's you got Flynn, who's had his computer software stolen by this big company, and he goes to take it back. And then he's basically all the stuff that's sort of going on is just an analog for the real world kind of thing. So there is that sort of juxtaposition of what's happening in the computer world to what is actually happening in the big world. It's just a reflection of that, which is why all those characters that are in there are also in the real world, that kind of stuff. It's not a very full story, and neither's the second one really. It has a bit more of a story, but it's not again, it's not really about being in a computer world. It's about something very different.
It's a different generation fighting the same battle.
More or less, yeah. So yeah, it's Tron for me was never really about the story. It was always about kind of like the wow factor of it, which is why You know, it can seem boring, you know, by today's standards now, because I do remember watching it at the cinema at the time that it came out, and it was just like, oh my god, that is incredible. Just absolutely eye-popping, you know, just mind-blowing, these visuals, and very exciting for someone who was getting into computers at the time.
I think that's also kind of the factor for me as well, because the story is second to the effects and the visual, you know, animation and stuff. But it's so groundbreaking in its own right.
I mean, when I did the video on it, I went into the animation techniques and all that kind of stuff that are involved in it, and it was quite incredible. They're talking about, you know, basically the way they did bits of it was lots of matting and all that kind of stuff. So there was cell upon cell upon cell upon cell just stacked up to make this thing kind of work, you know, to the point that they were saying they had to turn the light up underneath it so bright that it was at risk of burning it, because it's like an inch thick.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. Because I mean, it was all very, very manual. There's very, very little of it is actually computer generated. There is some stuff, and that was mostly like the tanks moving around and things like that, which is apparently the biggest part of the work was, well, at the time of making the film, was waiting for that to process, because you know the computers weren't quite so sprightly back then.
No, they weren't, that's for sure. They took up whole rooms almost, didn't they? So, and they were so expensive.
Kieran says next large step for cinema is going to be Tom Cruise flying off to space for real. It'd do that. It'd probably put a saddle on the rocket.
John is he going to be going with Bezos and Richard Branson, I wonder?
John says, I do own a rare piece of Disney media, an ex-rental VHS of Song of the South.
But he do that, eh?
You know, I do remember watching that as a kid. I don't remember much about the film. I did catch a little bit of it like a few years ago, and it's not quite what I remembered. It'd be an interesting one to sort of look at with a little bit of a few more years behind me. Just because putting it in context and what it is.
But is it as bad as people say? That's what I want to know. Because, like,
I think it's probably, you know, it suffers from the same kind of problems as something like Gone with the Wind. I think as much as anything, Gone with the Wind is an absolutely magnificent film in so many respects, but it does have the jolly plantation workers, and it doesn't address any of those issues.
The carefree damsel and
I mean, I wrote an article for Frankly Green Bay at one point about it, but now that was at the point when, you know, there were calls for it to be taken off the shelves, not to be screened anymore, or all that kind of stuff. And it, you know, I sat down and watched the film, and there's a bit in it where Rhett Butler basically goes, yes, I'm off for a political meeting.
Yes, that's right.
It's like, yeah, you know what?
I'll be back soon.
Yeah, you know what that political meeting was. I mean, he's a Ku Klux Klan guy. And it's barely addressed in that film.
But it is kind of more blatant in the novel.
Yeah, yes, it would be.
You know, because it's like the film doesn't really go into the meetings per se, but the book does. It's kind of more like, this is why he believes the way he is, and this is why you know, he's so kind of aggressively macho.
Yeah.
Towards Scarlett.
I mean, he in no uncertain terms rapes her in part of it, and she wakes up the next morning, oh, fiddle-dee-dee, what a night, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. She just rubs it off like nothing's happened.
Yeah. It's kind of mad when you look at it these days. It's also interesting to realise that, you know, I think it was the first Oscar for a black actor.
Yeah, that's right.
Although she wasn't, I think she was there. I can't remember if she completely got banned or from going to the event because it was a whites only place, or whether they eventually sort of sorted out. But she did get an Oscar for it, which is quite something. And it's a great.
Sorry for that reason alone.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great performance in it. Mammy, I believe, if I remember rightly. It has been a while. Kieran says, I love the black hole. As an adult, I see its flaws, but I can't help but love the atmosphere, the two Maximilians, and the entire third act. Yes, Black Hole is an interesting one. It is another film that sort of disappears down well, pardon the pun, disappears down a hole somewhat. It kind of runs out of places to go about 2/3 of the way through. But the atmosphere of that film is quite something.
As well as Disney and their monopoly over media and stuff. There's also there's censorship of media. Back I think was it Splash 1984 came out. Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah. They made Daryl Hannah's hair longer in the streaming version.
Well, good luck doing that with something like Birth of a Nation, as MD Chaos brings up. Found Birth of a Nation in historic fantasy section. Yes, that's a fair comment. It is actually. That is one of the things I think I brought up in the article, and no, I don't have it archived. Unfortunately, I probably have it somewhere on my computer. But Birth of a Nation is actually kind of an interesting one, because it's one of those that somebody described it as one of the films that film studies people have to apologise for defending, which is not far from the truth, because as a story goes, it's pretty abhorrent. It's based on a story called The Klansman, so you can imagine it was a stage play essentially. So you can imagine, what it was like, and so he didn't really pull any punches on that. It's not pleasant. It is very much shining the Ku Klux Klan in a quote unquote good light as the heroes. They are no doubt the heroes within that movie. So he claimed a bit of ignorance of it. I'm not quite sure. I can really D.W. Griffith, who was the director of it, I'm not sure that if that was really a defence. Especially because it was massively controversial even at the time.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's just like May we had our local elections, the council elections, and there was a well-known Irish fascist canvassing in the town. Although he wasn't, it wasn't his part of the constituency. But he was. I just felt like going up to him and say, fuck off back to your sheep farm, you fucker. That. But he passed me with his video camera and all that. So I inadvertently got into one of his videos. But
hopefully giving the V's.
Sorry?
Hopefully giving the V's. Flicking the bird.
Well, I didn't actually, because he said hello to me and I kind of hello. Like that, very quietly.
You got all English all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I'll give him a peace of mind. Oh, hello, sir.
Give the Glasgow kiss.
I should point out, Kerri can't see me in real time at the moment because, unfortunately, I put one of my cameras away. Because this is, I said earlier, I think it was when I was muted, but this is a brand new camera, so hopefully it's actually doing a better job.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of looking at an angle.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at YouTube and I'm looking at the chat as well. So.
Kieran says I think we watched scenes from Birth of a Nation during film studies. We're looking at propaganda movies. There's many things to academically look at in that film. And the reason I would defend that as much as I would something like Gone with the Wind is because it is one of the really early examples of what we would recognise as filmmaking today. It is quite masterful in its filmmaking techniques, very innovative. It's not to say that he came up with all those various things, but he put them together in a way that was almost entirely unique at the time. And taking the context of what it is and putting that aside, taking what that story is and putting the kind of moral side of it to one side is leaves you with a film which is actually deeply, deeply impressive. I mean, it is a reason why it was used as, I should say, as a propaganda movie.
Yeah.
It was used as a recruiting tool for the Ku Klux Klan for a long time. I think right up into the 70s.
Jesus.
So it's a fascinating piece of film history, not just because of the controversy surrounding it, but because of what it practically was in terms of a piece of filmmaking. It is, without a doubt, incredibly powerful. And that's the thing.
Well, talking about propaganda, what Kieran says there, another movie we watched clips from was Jude Seuss, a Nazi film that has some of the most repellent scenes of racism you'll ever see. Well, the Nazis also made Irish propaganda movies, funnily enough.
Really?
Yeah, I watched a video on YouTube a couple of days ago about it, and it was kind of like they portrayed, Irish as so basically like them, the Nazis. You know, wanting, how the Nazis got rid of, well, not got rid of, but they reclaimed the Sudetenland and Prussia and stuff like that. But they portrayed the English as, I don't know how to describe them. It was just like, this force must be repelled. This is during World War II. And I think De Valera who was the Taoiseach at the time, he must have had a plan with Hitler. If Germany won the war, Ireland would be reunited. But it's weird when you see some of the clips from the movies. The Irish people are speaking German. The Irish characters, I should say.
Was it with an accent, though?
Yeah, there is a very blatantly German accent coming from these, supposedly Irish people. It's like, what's wrong here? That's just weird as fuck.
Guten Tag, Danny boy.
Yeah. Oh, Danny boy. Zip pipes, zip pipes.
Dear, oh dear. Yeah.
I must send you a link to the video, because you'll see strange
kind of
sounds
fun.
and all that.
Yeah. There's mention of Triumph for the Will as well, which is, that was another huge piece of propaganda by a very good filmmaker. And this is the thing: if you're a really good filmmaker, you can make excellent propaganda if you are so willing. But I think, rather than sort of shuttling that stuff under the carpet, identifying what it is and actually teaching people what it is very important. I mean, even in mainstream cinema, there's various kind of acts of propaganda. Going back to the Disney sort of thing, Disney did do propaganda during the World Wars as well. That was a thing. I think they even made something about nuclear weapons at one point. It was kind of...
They did make some animation as well, which they all, they kind of with Warner Brothers as well did the same. But when you say mainstream cinema, like, I've got this abhorrent disgust of movies which say the war and terror, movies like that. It's like, why do I want to watch that? I love my World War II movies. I love World War I movies. But when it comes to like more recent war movies, it's like, no. It's just
it's a Black Hawk Down.
It's like,
like Black Hawk Down, I think.
Well, that was more.
That was
Somalia.
very. Yeah, I know, but it kind of operates in the same sort of way. There was a lot of criticism for that, for essentially kind of whitewashing an awful lot of the bad things that the CIA did and that kind of stuff. So, it does very much happen. You see, certain like Christian propaganda films that have been made over the last 15, 20 years.
God's Not Dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of them are reasonably successful and others not so much. I think those are sort of things that kind of preach to the choir. But but even so, these things still exist today.
Well, I think it's just go briefly talking about MD has said, was these videos by Mecha Gamezilla? I'm not sure. but it might be. But in the light of the recent events in America with Trump's getting his ear clipped.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen on Facebook now, and I hate to say it, some people that I'm friends with sharing pictures of people with, bandages over their ears and sympathy votes. It's like, why?
It's kind of a funny thing, isn't it? I mean, it is. I don't want to go too far down the line of that stuff, but yeah. What you see, particularly within the Republican Party, is almost masterful for an American audience kind of version of taking information and packaging it in such a way that people find it palatable, despite how unpalatable it would be if you kind of said it straight. We have it to an extent over here as well. You've got various things like with Brexit and on both sides, basically, kind of talking about very hyperbolic examples and really kind of making a big thing of it. I mean, the big one, I guess, being the red bus of imagine where all that money could go, how much good it could do in the NHS sort of thing.
Yeah.
And never happened, did it?
No.
Doctors'
waiting lists are still the same, or worse.
Well, worse, yeah. Kieran says, Black Hawk Down, in and of itself, is an intense watch, but its position is questionable. Yeah. And the Brits putting on US accents is just weird.
Kieran, if you like Brits putting on American accents, check out The Man Who Talks to Goats, or Stared Goats, The Men Who Stared Goats.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ewan McGregor doing a great American accent.
It seems to work better from British to American than it does from American to British, generally speaking. Maybe that's just my ear, I don't know.
I would say yes, but I think Renee Zellweger in Bridget Jones' Diary and stuff.
Yeah. So it's always a few good examples.
All right.
Yeah.
But,
I think one of the talking of that sort of stuff, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, James Masters played Spike. Does a very consistent British accent. I mean, it's a bit received, but to an extent. But even so, I was always quite impressed by by his.
That's what you never got into.
I always enjoyed Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's just a shame that the director is a bit of a cunt.
Well, yeah. He's made his bed, hasn't he? So
yeah. Joss Whedon. Yeah, see, he's bumped up against a few sort of pieces of his history. He was a bit of a dick, to say the least, from pretty much everybody who's worked with him has come out and said,
I heard that too. Yeah,
horrible. But watching bad things the CIA did in Black Hawk Down. I think it's just Ridley Scott not watching his movies or reading history as usual. Yeah, Ridley Scott. This is another aspect of it, isn't it? When it comes to historical stuff, I've always been like, if it's something about something real, you don't have to, verbatim get absolutely everything right, but you should at least get the spirit of it right.
Yeah.
It's very important that you kind of present, if you're purporting to be historical in any way, shape, or form, you really should be thinking about presenting that stuff honestly, because the amount of damage you can cause by screwing that stuff up is amazing. And I think certain aspects of that do come back to haunt us on various occasions.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mainly, like Scott doesn't do history well. Okay, with the exception of maybe of the duelists. His historical films have been but that's me in a nutshell. Like I love history in general, but when you see something like Gladiator and it's accurate to maybe about 50% of the time, and then you see something like Black Hawk Down accurate, maybe 40%, 30% tops.
See, I don't mind with something like Gladiator that it takes liberties. It's not so much of a big deal about that because it's not really based on a true story. It's just a
Oh, right,
kind of
yeah, okay, I can see that.
So I've got less problem with that than I would have with something like Black Hawk Down. Just simply because particularly because of its proximity in time from when it was made, from when the actual event happened, and there's still people who are involved with that were kind of still around and all that sort of stuff. But it changes the complexion of current events when people start having this enforced Mandela effect, essentially.
Yeah, that's an issue for so many people.
And I mean, there's so many examples of that where stuff gets kind of screwed around with, and it's like it changes, or at least has an effect on current day politics. I think you have to be bloody careful, particularly when you're talking about something like the events of Black Hawk Down, that you're honest and you don't make stuff up that has an impact on the real world. You have to be careful with that stuff.
I was watching a short there on YouTube, maybe a couple of days ago, just maybe I was going to say 2 minutes, less than a minute short, and it's had Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher on Blue Peter talking about Star Wars. And Mark was asked, "What's you're going to do one more movie, and then what are you going to be doing after?" And he said, "Yeah, we're going to do one more movie, and it's going to be called." And Carrie Fisher says, "Revenge of the Jedi," which was the original title for Return of the Jedi. And then he says, "We're going to go into prequel territory, blah blah, go back in time to the young Anakin Skywalker." And this was the early 80s, so if you think that the title Revenge of the Jedi was mentioned then, and somebody might think, oh, this is just Mandela effect, it's called Return of the Jedi. But when you hear one of the actors actually categorically saying it,
well, there's posters of it.
Yeah, there was posters.
Yeah, they got as far as the publicity material went out. And had that on there. Yeah. So that's the funny thing. It's like I'd always sort of accepted that, like, Star Wars had the first Star Wars had episode 4 as the as the opening to the opening crawl.
Yeah.
And it didn't. Originally it didn't have it. It was It was just like kind of went straight into the spiel. So
no context, nothing. So
no, George Lucas changed so many things as he went along with those things. It's kind of unreal. I mean, when George Lucas does a lot of that, though. He's a bit devil may care when it comes to history. Although it's not a historical film. Temple of Doom, as a for instance, has the bad guys, the thuggies, were actually real people. So, and they weren't what he portrayed. That essentially was the film I showed the other week, Gunga Din. Essentially, he took that and then kind of ran with it, and both him and Spielberg were both kind of like pissed off with a lot of stuff, so they kind of really sort of sexed up the violence somewhat.
It's kind of revising history, isn't it?
But it doesn't help when people sort of come along to the references to these people, because occasionally it will come up, is references to the thuggies and that kind of stuff. To have that in the back of your head and thinking, oh yeah, it's the guys from that. No, it's not. They're completely different. Why he didn't just call them something different, I've got no idea. There's more purpose for it in Gunga Din than there was in Temple of Doom, because that's probably a I would say realistic, but the situation and who those people were, I think, was probably a little bit closer. It's kind of guilty of that. I mean, it is a very at the risk of sounding all right on and stuff. It's a very empire-driven narrative, it's going
Would
to
you
be.
say it's more like whitewashing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could say one of the films that sort of comes to mind when I think of something like Gunga Din and the kind of historical context and all that kind of stuff would probably be Zulu. Is a much better example of a historical film. It's not accurate in many respects, but it doesn't vilify the bad guys in the same
No.
way. You know, it kind of rehabilitates their image towards the end of the film, and there's this mutual respect sort of comes
Well, given
out
the
of it.
historical context of the movie,
Mm.
you know, the Boer War was, you know, basically a losing battle because there's so many more Zulus and, you know, British troops and Dutch troops. But
And
Zulu did a really good job in that, I think.
yeah, I mean, like I say, it's not perfect. You can absolutely tear it apart for many things
Yeah.
if you're so willing to do that. But as you know, it like I say, it doesn't vilify them. They're a little
No.
bit faceless in some respects, but you've got to remember the film is also told from the point of view of the British Army.
Yes. It's respectful to a greater degree than a lot of maybe pre-World War II era movies.
I mean, funny enough, actually, it's like I think of Zulu. Then you know where my mind goes to after that? Assault on Precinct 13.
That's a weird.
Because the
Switch.
beginning, because how the enemy are
Oh yeah. I see.
presented in Zulu to begin with, at the very
Yeah.
least, you know, towards the end they start to become kind of respectful of them, but it's just this sort of wave, this human meat wave. Being thrown at these people that you're encouraged to support. And Assault on Precinct 13 has the same kind of vibes in many respects.
I thought you were going to say something like because it's just kind of similar, because it's got claustrophobic themes.
It does. I mean, yeah, there's I do wonder if John Carpenter kind of like had that in the back of his head when he made it to some extent, because it has very similar vibes in so many aspects of the film. But
Like, you know, being politically, you know, Carpenter is very hugely political in his movies.
another Mandela effect is people thinking that Dolly has braces in Moonraker. Oh, that's the girl that Jaws dates.
Yeah, Jaws' girlfriend, yeah.
You know what? I thought that as well. I don't know why. Or maybe
I don't know what to think.
they
I haven't seen.
CG'd it out. It's
Maybe they have.
it's funny, isn't it? I guess because when he has the big steel teeth, I don't know. I could have sworn there's a bit where
Maybe
she
he chewed them
smiles
off
at him, and
when
he
he
sort of
was-
like sees the braces, and it's like, kind of, oh, you've got metal teeth as well.
It's love.
It's always kind of a weird bit, wasn't it? I think that was Moonraker was really the point where that era of Bond was kind of getting a little bit strange.
A little bit strange. You mean like, you know, the man with the golden gun wasn't strange?
No, I mean Roger Moore certainly had the more humorous, I think, more overtly humorous version of Bond out of him and Connery as a.
Well, he was definitely the campiest Bond.
Oh, definitely.
You know.
It's kind of interesting, though, isn't it? You know, the Bond films. I'm not a massive Bond film fan, but I have enjoyed them. Just how distinct the various eras were from one Bond to another. They've all got very the whole film, the style, the stories. The texture of them changed from one person to the next quite significantly. It's quite fascinating.
We were watching the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Yeah.
the new Guy Ritchie movie there a few days ago, and one of the characters is Ian Fleming, and apparently
Yes.
he got the inspiration from being in this covert operation for
Yeah.
Bond. So
A lot of them were kind of working in those sorts of things
yeah,
at the time. So yeah, absolutely. That sort of would have inspired some of his stories. And when you start looking at kind of like what British warfare history was, when you're talking about kind of like military invention and stuff like that, there's some pretty batty stuff went on.
yes,
Very,
this was a Batty movie too.
yeah, and a very, very innovative to the point of insanity, to be
Yeah,
quite honest. Spike says, "Give me Moonraker any day over From Russia with Love or any of the more highly regarded Bond films." Don't get me wrong, Spike. I think Moonraker is a lot of fun. And there was a reason why for the longest time I think Roger Moore was my favourite Bond. It's just because it was eminently enjoyable. It's utterly ridiculous. I mean, they all were ridiculous, but his was kind of like batshit crazy in comparison to some of the other ones. But it was
I'm
fun.
I'm with Minty, Connery and Dalton for me.
Mm. Mm.
I love Dalton because it's more gritty like Connery,
Mm.
but there's also a bit of humour.
Yeah. Yeah.
With Moore.
He was a bit short-lived, wasn't he, as a Bond?
Yeah, 2 movies. It was meant to be 4.
Mm.
Because he's meant to be cast in a 92 movie and then be cast in GoldenEye, but obviously things, didn't work out. But I just love Living Daylights. That's my favourite Bond.
Yeah, I liked Dalton as Bond. Definitely ranks right up there. I guess a lot of it sort of depends on what your mood is, really. I think, funny enough, Sean Connery's Bond is probably the most dated.
Yeah, definitely.
Just in terms of attitudes
Yeah.
and the likes. That's not to say that chuck them in the bin. They're done. They are what they are. They were very much of the time, and Connery's Bond, very much like Connery himself, is that very old school traditional guy, and that's how he played it. I mean, he was playing that kind of role right through to Zardoz and even The Rock.
Highlander.
Yeah, exactly. That's just the kind of actor he was.
Maybe the Untouchables as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine too many actors with his kind of character would be making many films these days.
No.
So kind of.
I think that's, when he made The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and he said that was his last movie because he disagreed with everything the director had. It was just mainly because of his attitude,
Yeah.
David S. Goyer was a modern director, and
he was a very old-fashioned kind of guy, to a fault,
Yeah.
to be perfectly blunt. But still, his films, I think, kind of speak for themselves. You just have to put certain things to one side and kind of write it off as that's how it was back in the day to some extent. He was the manly man of the time, so...
yeah, as Minty says, old school masculine.
Yeah, very much so. And it's kind of, that's the thing. That's why Zardoz, as ridiculed as that film may be, was an almost perfect role for him. Because he was, in that role, he's this sort of hyper-masculine avatar for what men are, both kind of like, societally, mentally, sexually, even. It's just this. It's quite a remarkable film when you start breaking it down like that. It's utterly ridiculous when you come into it cold, because you see, Sean Connery in there crimson bandolier and
Yeah.
the little cloth loin.
And they come fuck me boots.
Yes.
And then you later see him in the wedding dress. It's like,
Yeah.
what?
He did not want to do that.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say so.
Did not want to do that. I think it took a lot of liquor and a lot of persuasion for him to get to
John Berman in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, this I've got to watch it again at some point soon, but because it's been such a long time since I've seen it. It is an incredible film in so many respects. As flawed as it is, and it is flawed.
That's the charm, though, isn't it? Because it doesn't take itself seriously.
It kind of does and it doesn't.
All right.
Yeah, I think it kind of does and it doesn't. I think there is a sense of humour to it. Obviously, there's a sense of humour to it. I think the narrator type guy in it is a kind of comedic element. And I think there are aspects of it which is like kind of like, you know, it's a sci-fi sort of. I don't think you would describe it as a comedy, but there is a definite aspect of it which is kind of humorous in its own right, but not like right out front. If you
See, I wouldn't call it a sci-fi.
I mean, it is. I would certainly call it sci-fi. I mean, it's a futuristic thing with
futuristic.
With kind of like shields surrounding certain things. It's kind of almost a post-apocalyptic. It is bordering on that, if not crossing that border. So I'd kind of put it down as sci-fi. I can understand why people wouldn't, because it's not really kind of doing the whole kind of 2001 type thing.
Oh God, no, that's hard sci-fi.
Yeah, that is hard sci-fi. I mean, I've always described 2001 as one of the very few true sci-fi films. That is a rare accolade, because I mean, that does kind of like use space as a vehicle for as a wider palette, if you like, or wider landscape for a much smaller thing, which is humanity. Kind of puts.
Well, the thing is, it's interpreting, comparing, or so I should say, like Zardoz to 2001 is something like you never thought I'd hear, but at the same time, you get like there's so many different interpretations of what 2001 is about, and it's like I watched it recently and I had the sound coming from speakers, and it was brilliant to watch like it was in the cinema. And then you see this at the end with the Star Child, and it's like this is perfect movie. I have my own interpretation about it. I know I'm probably wrong, but I don't care. But
it is a very elegant film in many respects, and I think people tried to overcomplicate that movie in terms of interpretation, and it's really not that. I think if you want to distill what the movie is about, watch the first 25 minutes, The Dawn of Man. Then you understand what you take it, you apply that to the rest of the film. That's what the movies are about. It's it's about humanity.
Well, lucky enough, I read the source. Well, not the source. They're written at the same time, but Clark's novel before seeing the movie, and I thought, Clark goes into obviously more detail because it's his story.
Yeah.
But the theme of evolution through gifts from the gods, for me rings true when I read it and see the movie.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, that the fact that this is in the film, it's aliens that are kind of making this happen is almost a insignificant part of what's actually going on. It's just kind of like it's a way of forcing the matter, as opposed to being actually kind of intrinsic to the story. So it's kind of like, 'cause if you went just with evolution, you've got to take a very long time to actually kind of tell the story. Yeah. So it's a way of kickstarting things and actually sort of like going, right, okay, this is then before this thing happens, therefore ... So and that happens at the end as well. So it happens at the after the opening, it happens at the end as well with the wormhole, and
Yeah,
things
like it's to
change.
paraphrase Zardos. uh, Monolith bad, bone good.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because it's technology essentially. People make a big deal about the fact that it's weapons. It is in the first instance weapons that kind of forces this change with the early humans, if you like,
Yep.
from ape to man. And then it has that jump cut with the bone to a satellite, which it's not explained in the film but that's actually a weapons platform, supposedly.
So maybe rephrase what I said. Then.
Yeah, but
Bone bad, monolith good.
yeah, it doesn't really sort of carry on though. That's the thing, and I think that's probably the reason why Kubrick didn't make a big deal of it, because the end of the film doesn't have that same thing. It's not weaponry that actually changes people. It's technology.
Yeah.
The bone is essentially a piece of technology, a very early technology, but he learns how to bludgeon shit with it. So in the future or the present, as the film sort of happens, it's the technology of artificial intelligence which ends up forcing the change. Because,
But as I don't know if you've ever read 2061 and 3001.
I haven't, no.
No. Well, 3001 is trippy. Spoilers for people who haven't. I'm sorry, but like Hal and Dave Bowman merge and become a being called Halman. Kind of basically a super intelligent computer man hybrid dealy. And basically, if you've seen 2010, the film,
Yeah.
when he goes back to see his mother and sees his wife, it's kind of like that. He goes back in time
Yeah.
to correct things that which, stop wars and so evolution can happen.
I think
And it's sped up then, you see. So
the thing I thought about 2010, funny enough, was more that it was unnecessary. I don't think it was a bad film at all. It's a pretty good film in most respects. Very enjoyable, certainly. But I think it was one of those sequels that I kind of always felt was kind of redundant. It didn't need it. And I think, it was as much, like obviously Clark wanting to kind of put his side of the story, really, because, Kubrick is famous for taking source material and altering it for what he wants to do with it. Whether it's The Shining or whether it's 2001. I don't know if you know about the history of the novel and the film. The film eventually, I believe, came out first after the novel. Because they were produced at the same time.
Oh, you mean 2001?
Yeah.
Yeah, the novel came after, slightly after, maybe a month or so after.
And that was largely because Kubrick kept throwing obstacles in obviously Clark's way.
Yeah.
He wanted his film to come out first before the novel. I guess, to an extent, what 2001 is not necessarily what R.C. Clarke kind of meant it to be. It's a bit different.
I'm just reading Kieran's comment here. I admit I really enjoyed 2010. Like the only one who does. But hey ho, you're not the only one, Kieran. I love it myself. I do think I would have to disagree, Glenn. I do think it was a sequel that was needed. Mainly, kind of a war for those of us. Well, first when I saw it, who wanted to know more about what happened to Dave Bowman. What is he alive? Is he dead? Is he going to be perpetually the Star Child? And it didn't answer those questions.
No, it doesn't. But I've always felt that those are kind of necessarily the questions that don't necessarily need to be answered.
No, but it did answer some questions, like like the discovery, is it, is it active? Can it be rescued?
Mm-hmm.
And no, it can't be rescued because it's, out there in space. But they do get HAL active and activated again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a great, again, with talk about social commentary, and it was written, just the film that is, not the story. The novel's totally different. It's more like the film's more kind of multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a different universe. This is happening, whereas in the film, it's it's carry on the story.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm probably a bit more like David Lynch in some respects when it comes to films like that. In that, I don't necessarily need full conclusions.
Okay.
I don't necessarily need certain things explained, and this is not me trying to be higher than mightier than you kind of thing. Certainly not that. It's more. I think the way I watch films. Sometimes the questions are more intriguing than the answers, and there's been many things like that. Oh, I'll give you a very throwaway, frivolous comparison, and that'll be Demolition Man. Right? Okay. A very silly film for the most part. Actually, kind of neat little piece of social commentary, but. It's done in a very kind of comic book sort of Hollywood sort of way. The three seashells. It's a joke that works because you don't ever get the answer.
No.
And I think I feel the same way about 2001 in many respects, in that I can come up with better answers and can probably be presented to me by anybody else, if you know what I mean.
Well, I have one thing to say to you about that. Mm-hmm. Glenn, you're find one credit for violation of verbal morality act. To be honest, it's one of my favourite guilty pleasure movies.
Mm. I mean, I try not to have films that I would call guilty pleasures as much as possible. There are a few I think would probably sort of stand up there in some respects. Maybe Bloody Moon, because it is a ridiculous bloody film in so many respects. But that's
Franco, you say so.
Yeah, it's Franco. I mean, the thing was, it's in many respects, it's a beautiful film. It's really nicely shot. It had good quality equipment and a good crew. It just had a ropey fucking story.
Well, admittedly, the first time I watched it was one of the stream you did a couple of years ago with it. Mm-hmm. So I can't really remember it that well, but it did look beautiful, to be fair.
Yeah, it's it's typical Jess Franco when he's had he's handed a project and given a reasonable amount of money to do it with. Not a lot, but enough to make a movie, and he finds time on occasions to do something a little bit special, and it can be like 2 or 3 moments within the film, like that shot of the girl, and it's like the moon in the background kind of stuff. She's beautifully lit, and it's just a stunning looking shot. And I can't remember if it was like a few minutes later or whatever. Then you've got like kind of shake your baby, shake your baby.
Yeah, I remember that from the soundtrack, alright.
Mad Foxes isn't a guilty pleasure of yours. Yes, yeah, that would. I guess that would be a guilty pleasure. That is. Oh my god, that is such an insane film. Insane. I mean, you've been along for the Mad Foxes watch-alongs, haven't you?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my god. Try to get hold of that film these days. It's really a lot more difficult.
If I see it on YouTube, I'll download it. But
yeah, absolutely. I think I might have a bootleg of it somewhere. But that film is just pure exploitation.
No sympathy.
No. The thing is, it's like every character in that film is so damn revolting, absolutely detestable to the bone, that it doesn't matter what happens to anyone. The only kind of sympathy you have for any characters is the kind of peripheral characters that sort of come and go.
Just reading MD's wee comment there. I think the term guilty pleasure is a dumb term. I mean, why would I feel guilty for liking or finding enjoyment in, I don't know, Leviathan? Exactly, yeah. It is a misnomer, but
Oh, I don't
we
think.
all have our own.
Yeah, I don't think you should feel any guilt for
No.
For enjoying those films. I think for me the phrase guilty pleasure is one of those that you sort of like go, I can't really justify liking it, but I do. It's probably
It's like for me, one of my. Well, I suppose most people wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure, or I would say it's more like, for me, it's kind of a movie I want to watch when I'm feeling in the mood for it. And it's Alice, Sweet Alice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a dark movie, but it's
Yeah.
it's one of my all-time faves for the content of it.
Yeah, it's that's the American title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daddy's Little Darling or something.
They had about 3 or 4 names. Yes, it is a very dark film. It's not as dark as something like Don't Go in the House or something like that. When it comes to the nasties and stuff like that, there was that and Nightmare in a Damaged Brain.
Yeah.
That film that's hard to watch even for me. It's not because it's gory or anything. It's just, oh my god, it's such a mean-spirited film.
Yeah, that's the thing, you see. Like, I have to be in the mood to watch them.
Collector Adam says, picked up Mad Foxes on DVD. I think we talked about that film more than any other on the streams. Yeah.
And we're still talking about it, Adam.
It is. It's a terrible film in just about every metric. It's just, the writing is bad. The characters are bad. The filming is adequate, generally, at best. There's some nice photography in there. But there's nothing about that film that you should objectively be able to go, that's a good film. It really isn't. It's awful on just about every respect. It panders to the worst kind of instincts in its audience. You've got this character that basically just moves from woman to woman to woman to woman, and he's the hero. He also, basically runs a Nazi guy. Yes, he's a Nazi, the generic bastard, but he runs the guy off the road, then wonders why his pals turn up to beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, that's kind of like, did you get bestowed of brains there, Mr. Nazi?
There's that fight scene where he basically force feeds that Nazi his own cock. Cut it off. It's like, oh my god, this is the hero.
Glenn, I'm to be honest, I'm kind of glad your channel isn't monetized. Because if it was, this video would never go online.
Oh my god, it's just astounding. It is. It's so bad in so many respects, but it is, for whatever reason, funny as hell to watch.
It's just because it's so unbelievably silly.
Yeah,
the whole premise.
Absolutely over the top. I mean, it's so far over the top that you don't care that it's good. It's just a ride.
Yeah, it's the kind of movie that would cheer me up if I was having a bad day.
Thank you, Kieran. Communion. That's the title of Alice, Sweet Alice.
Oh, okay, right.
One of the Section 3 titles. Jaws 3D is one I can derive enjoyment from. I know many people hate it, but I can't help but like it. It's fine. I mean, I think there's things about Jaws 3D I enjoy, despite how bad it objectively is. It's another one of those films. It's like, particularly being a 3D film, and most people end up watching it in 2D. And it's like at the end when the shark gets blown up and the jaws sort of come towards the screen and do that. Just the dismembered jaws of the shark comes up. That's that. It's kind of crazy. Take it easy, Spike.
He snuck away.
But going back to the sort of historical sort of stuff, we're talking about films that are kind of pure exploitation, like Mad Foxes and stuff. And then you've got films that are described as pure exploitation, which are actually historically pretty significant, like like Men Behind the Sun and Nanjing Massacre. Those two films that are often sort of regarded as being pure gore films by some people, but are actually very potent lessons from history.
But isn't that the thing, though? That's what the Japanese did to the Chinese people. So it is accurate. Yeah, it's gory, yeah, but real life, was worse.
I mean, the director was very politically active, when it came down to it, and he was telling it how he saw it. I think there was even pressure from the Chinese government for him to tone it down, if not, don't tell that story. But he still went ahead and did it. And it's amazing, isn't it? I think, certainly films like that are kind of important, a lot more important than many, even like film historians, necessarily kind of would give them credit for, because horror is one of those things, one of the horror exploitation and that kind of genre has an amazing power to tell stories that can't otherwise be told.
Yep, agreed.
No, I mean, it's like the one I've said on several occasions before, the Cannibal Man. There's things encoded in that film that he couldn't legitimately come out and just say it straight. No pun intended. So it's kind of within that kind of genre, there's so much wiggle room for kind of being able to tell a story and to put messages which are otherwise, it's a horrible way to say it, unpalatable to the mainstream, and get them out there, and the people who know. There was a British film called Victim.
Yes, yep.
Which did that kind of stuff. I think it's one of the first uses of the word queer in British cinema.
It was, yeah.
And
that's right.
People didn't realise what that meant, generally speaking, because it didn't mean what it means these days. But
yeah, the mainstream audience didn't know.
Yeah, the people who were kind of like that story was partly aimed at understood that, and they saw themselves within this movie, or at least some representation of themselves. Human Experiments is another one. There is something of a feminist kind of tract within that film, which is a little unusual within a women in prison film. Speaking of which, women in prison films, I'll be doing a Blu-ray commentary, hopefully at some point soon. For, and I can't really say which one it is at the moment, but I've been invited to participate in one of those. It's going to be an interesting one. As soon as I've done it and it's gone kind of out there, or at least so it's recorded and it's sent off, then I'll talk about that. But yeah, I'm going to be doing another Blu-ray commentary.
Awesome.
Should be fun.
But when you say, just getting back briefly to queer, no, not queer, Victim.
Mm-hmm.
That was instrumental in changing the law for gay men in the 60s.
Yeah, and
I think a movie like that would have so much power.
There was another film called Yield to the Night, which was basically about. Do you know it?
No, I actually don't.
Diana Dawes. She plays this woman on death row in Britain.
Okay.
And it basically follows her life in the last few days before a sentence is carried out. And it was shown, as I understand it, in the Houses of Parliament. And when it came to the debate about the death penalty, and as the director believes it actually had some kind of impact upon the decision to abolish the death penalty. Which is quite incredible. It's actually a really good film. I highly recommend it if you get a chance to watch it. It's pretty powerful. She spends a lot of the time kind of like, musing, what's the other side of that door? Of course, that's the place where she would be sent to die.
There's also I'm trying to think. There's Children's Hour with Audrey Hepburn.
Mhm.
It was the first, I think, first American mainstream film. This is the 60s still again, so not mainstream now, but it was the first movie or film to show lesbianism as it is. No sensationalism.
As opposed to the little skin flicks that Britain used to have.
Yeah, or well.
Yeah.
It was groundbreaking as is.
Yeah.
You could argue that Glenn or Glenda was for when I can't even think of his name. Oh Jesus, Edward. Made,
yeah.
What that did for trans awareness. This is the 50s, and it's still relevant in many ways.
Claire Tretter says, that's awesome, Glenn. Can you remind us on Blu-ray commentaries you've done before? So it was Mikey. I did something for like a featurette for Absurd. I was in the featurette for Mad Dog Killers. I think there was something else as well I've done. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, they're fun to do.
Just make sure you wash your hair first.
Yeah. Oh yes, Mountain of the Cannibal God, Ursula Andress. Cool. I did a little documentary as an extra for that, which is quite fun. That was actually quite good. I'd love to put it up on YouTube, but it would last about 5 seconds before I got my channel taken down. I had to apologise to the guys when I sent it in, and basically I'd made it. As opposed to specifically on the film, I made it as a documentary on cannibalism in films, essentially. So I used loads of examples. And they were like, yeah, we can't really do that. It's a DVD. It doesn't have fair use in the same way as
yeah, probably didn't have the rights to show them either.
But they kind of went, well, actually, we know these people have got these rights. We know the people have got those rights. These people over here have those rights. So they did a bit of footwork to try and get it sorted out, but they got it on there.
Very good.
So that was quite something. See you, Simon.
Bye, Si. I think he's gone now. A long time.
Kieran says Yield to the Night by J. Lee Thompson. I can't remember the director off the top of my head, but it sounds about right. Want to watch it, but I haven't found a copy yet. I think you can probably stream it. You might be able to stream it. I don't know if there's a current Blu-ray release. It was never really that high profile a film, so DVD releases of it are a little bit sparse.
MD, actually, when you're looking forward to Lampy Man commentary on Island of Death, that's going to be my commentary.
No, I would happily do that. I really would. As much as the I did do a commentary track on it. That's just the funny thing, because the director actually struck down 2 videos of mine. One was the review and one was the commentary track. And on the commentary track, I literally used about every 10 minutes, I'd use about 2 seconds of footage, so people could make sure they were synced up. And he got me for that. Yeah.
I'm kind of glad I got a second hand.
What's the commentary on Mikey on the MVD release? I think so. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was a German release. I think it was. Oh God, I'd have to find it. The name slips my mind. But basically, it was a digibox kind of one with the booklet in it and all that kind of stuff. Pretty neat release. Actually, it was kind of interesting, that one, because Mikey is the main reason I was on there is because I have a certain amount of history with the censorship coverage, and Mikey was one of those that suffered censorship problems over here because it was due to be released. It got delayed, but in the meantime, James Bolger was murdered, and because the protagonist, or antagonist if you like, of Mikey as a child, who is a killer, the BBFC kind of went, fuck, we can't, because they'd even given it a certificate at that point. The only thing that had held it back from being released on time was the video packaging certificate, essentially, right? So the artwork that they had to submit to this review board, that is part of the process. You had to do that. Because that got delayed, the film was delayed until like January, February. And of course, James Bolger was killed in that time, and the BBFC withdrew the certificate. They were so unlucky with the timing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a film that is particularly gruesome. It's kind of goofy more than it is mean-spirited.
Just not good timing.
Not good timing. Just absolutely. I mean, and the thing is, I think I said on the commentary, I can understand why the BBFC did it, because they couldn't release this film under the circumstances, because they would have got a hell of a lot of kickback, to the point that the government would have got involved. They would be putting their existence in jeopardy.
Wasn't there a movie as well that was, well, I wouldn't say banned, but release was held back in light of Dunblane as well, wasn't there?
Natural Born Killers.
Was that it?
I think it might have been Natural Born Killers, that one. There was a few, I think, which were kind of held back. Natural Born Killers got... I want to say it was a couple of years after the film actually got released.
Yeah, that came out in 94, so...
Yeah.
Dunblane was 94, so...
Yeah, that had no end of problems. No end of problems. It was forever and a day before it got a release over here. Funny enough, I just found the quad poster for it. I've got a bit of spare wall over here, which is the first time in a long time where I've had a bit of spare wall. So either I'm probably going to I've got an Exorcist quad poster as well, so it might be up there. I've just got to find some way of attaching it without actually kind of damaging the walls.
Funny enough, actually, is it the one movie that you're not a fan of? Is it Cold Fish?
Oh, depends which Cold Fish you're talking about, the Japanese or the British.
British one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got. I can't remember the movie I got it, but it was a poster for Little Fish.
Oh, aye.
And I thought that was it. So I was like, well, I don't want to put this up on the wall. And I looked up, the Cold Fish cast, and this is not it. This is the one I have is, with Kate Blanchett and all that. So I was like, oh, okay. Totally different movie.
Yeah. Just address Kerri. Yes, Mikey is still technically banned. Nobody's resubmitted it in this country since then. But yeah, Cold Fish, just an absolutely, literally one of my all-time least favourite movies. It's pretty awful. I'd sit through The Worst of Jess Franco 10 times before I watch that movie again.
Kind of reminds me, when you talk about bad movies, like there was a movie came out in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
February 2021. And it was like, I can't remember the exact title, but it was set in a submarine, and it was kind of like they're talking about COVID. So it was kind of made during COVID, lockdown and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they had it was like, oh, I don't know, really cheesy dialogue. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was like pandemic on board ship or something like that. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
It says Project X is one of my most hated.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen that.
I think you have, because you mentioned it before to me.
Did I?
Yeah, you said, and you said there was a movie that these kids going to a party.
Oh,
a
that
party,
one.
And I was like, is it Project X? And he says, yeah, it is.
I just Google that. Yeah. Oh, yes, that's the one. Holy fuck. Yes, that is a bad movie. Oh, now, there's one thing I hate in a movie. It's where characters are really kind of portrayed as being they're presented as these awful, awful people, and we're expected to love them. And there's been a few films like that. Devil's Rejects was one. You know, these characters spend the first 3/4 of the movie raping, murdering, and being absolute bastards, and then at the end we're supposed to go, oh, they're getting murdered by the cops. It's like, yeah, I mean, even the cops in that are like complete and utter shits as well.
Guilty pleasure again. The trilogy, the Firefly trilogy of mine is another guilty pleasure.
I can't. I do. It just grates right up against me, those films.
Well, see, I'm not a fan of Rob Zombie, so work, but I like those ones.
It's fair enough.
But Adam says, for a brief second, Kerri, I thought you were going to offer to send Glenn a quad poster of Cold Fish for this wall.
I'd have to put it up, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Maybe I could track down the crew and get them to sign it.
That's an idea. I think on your review video, there's somebody on the crew commented on it.
Yeah, a few did actually.
Yeah.
They had a little bit of a reunion in my comment section.
Bringing people together.
Oh dear, I think a load of them didn't get paid either. It was like, that
could be the subtitle of your channel.
Yeah.
Instead of Cynical Celluloid, it'll be bringing people together, one film at a time.
MDKR says, awful people that we're supposed to like. Yeah, typical Eli Roth film. Yeah, absolutely. It's, oh my god.
Eli Roth, no. I like Hostel 1. That's one Eli Roth movie I like.
The only thing I can say about Hostel, the first one, is it's very reminiscent of a load of the Japanese sort of super gore films, but without the kind of content behind it. I can watch it. It's semi enjoyable, kind of like, oh, there's a lot of splatter, but over and above that, it's pretty charmless. Did Christopher Biggins comment too? That would be Cold Fish, because he's like literally the best thing in that film is Christopher Biggins.
Jeez, that says a lot.
He was not a bad actor actually, when it came down to it. He was more of a stage guy than anything. But yeah, it was like, yeah. No, he didn't, unfortunately. Although he did sort of turn up to load of pantos I used to work at the Arts Theatre, because I think it was the year before I started at the Arts Theatre in Cambridge. He was the panto dame. And then they'd periodically, every other year or whatever, they'd turn up at the Arts Theatre to see what was going on.
Right. I think the closest I ever got to somebody like him was Sean McGinley. You probably wouldn't have ever heard of him over in England as much, but his most well-known film would have been Michael Collins, where he played one of the IRA members that Collins recruits.
I haven't.
But he was born about maybe half an hour away from us here, and he went to school where I went to school, so 20 years apart. But
yeah. Kieran says, the first Hostel was okay. Besides, Roth doesn't excite me at all.
Same.
And it's down to characters. Eli Roth does more or less what Quentin Tarantino does, but in the horror genre. For the most part, that's kind of what his shtick is. Lots of references, lots of lifting of ideas and scenes and things from various other films. It's perfectly legitimate in my opinion, but Eli Roth does not know how to write characters. He has the same problem that Rob Zombie has in my books, in that he's absolutely tone deaf to dialogue and characterization. These things that he puts on, these meat puppets that he puts in front of the camera, are literally there just to be dissected. You're not supposed to feel anything for them. You're not supposed to kind of think about them. None of that matters to him. It's literally all about the splatter. But unfortunately, the words he puts into their mouths are so repellent. And, I mean, again, it's like with Rob Zombie. There's a lot of these characters who go, "Ah, fuck, cunt, fuck, shit, fuck, bollocks," and that's it. That's it. Well, less of the bollocks, obviously, because he's American. But
You know who's actually like that as well? I would say Uwe Boll.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, Josh Hadley really likes Uwe Boll.
For his own friend Button.
I will not forgive him for that, but you know.
No, I won't either.
He did an interview with him. I mean,
oh right.
Uwe Boll's an interesting guy in some respects, and I think, you know, when you look at what he does and all that kind of stuff, he's like a really cynical version of like Roger Corman, just without necessarily the talent. He kind of throws a lot of, well, you know, throws a lot of stuff out there, and that was the thing. You just make films. Roger Corman would make a lot of films that were, you know, just outright cash cows, and that's all they were designed for. And you know, that's what Uwe Boll does, but he does it with a lot more cynicism. And
I kind of think that Roger Corman was a genius compared to Uwe Boll.
Oh, yeah. I think he was a much better, you know, producer, maker of films.
Yes.
By a long shot. But they have, you know, films which are kind of like, you know, they put them out there just because it's all about making a bit of money. There was a lot of producers out there that did very similar things. And, you know, you kind of look at the... I don't think anybody's going to come away from... I think one thing Roger Corman had as a much bigger plus was not only did he have, you know, a bunch of films that were much better, he was also one of those guys that sort of nurtured a lot of talent along the way. And that's a huge thing. And that was a big thing with like exploitation producers and directors. That there's a number of them that improved the industry, despite the fact that the industry kind of shunned them. And that's kind of something special. That's something Uwe Boll never had. He was in it for money, purely. Yep. That's it. Jess Franco or any of the Euro exploitation directors all made a whole bunch of films that were just kind of there just to make a bit of cash. You look at like Zombies Lake and stuff like that. And yes, I did say Zombies Lake. That is actually one of the titles. It's not just a misspelling.
Okay.
Yeah, films like that, you know, Bruno Mattei and Joe D'Amato.
Oh, Bruno Mattei.
They all made films that were kind of like Bruno Mattei. Not an awful lot of his films were actually kind of worth much more than a bit of a laugh, if that was your thing. But you can
laugh how bad it is.
Yeah, you can even look at the American market with Wes Craven and Abel Ferrara, amongst others, who started off in the sleazier end of filmmaking, to say the least.
Yeah.
They all kind of did that stuff. Uwe Boll didn't really have much of a mission, so to speak, to say the least.
But I would say that, you know, Ferrara and, you know, Craven, you know, they didn't stick to the genre. They diversed themselves into different, like Ferrara did a lot of crime dramas and, you know, he didn't stick to the horror. Whereas Boll is just, yeah.
Matt Kieran says, I hear that Uwe Boll was better at the independent stuff than his game-to-film adaptations, and I probably agree, actually, yes. The game-to-film stuff was... it was what it was. I mean, the games didn't exactly have an awful lot of story to tell. They weren't exactly narrative-driven things. It's not like Silent Hill or something like that. And was it Attack on Wall Street or something like that? I can't remember. It was the Uwe Boll film. was actually genuinely a much better film than most of those film to game stuff, but still not, still not amazing, but it was what it was, and I think he was actually fairly proud of that film, and good for him. Good for him. I'm not going to hold any kind of like grudge against somebody for making a bit of cash when it comes to movies, because when it comes down to it, that's exactly what most of the big ass studios are doing, and they berate their audience when they don't turn up for them.
I'm just checking his Bowles filmography here.
It was about 8-10 years ago, I think it was.
Rampage, Capital Punishment, was that it?
No, it was like Attack on Wall Street or something like that. I'll have a quick look. Wikipedia.
Yeah, Assault on Wall Street.
Assault on Wall Street, yeah.
Yeah, 2013, so yeah.
Yeah. Which is, it was a reasonably interesting film up to a certain extent, and then it kind of like devolves into pretty much just a outright action film. But, there was a little sliver of kind of like, political stuff going on with that. I genuinely get the feeling he was trying to make a film that actually kind of had something to say, which is refreshing. Had Keith David in it. Yes.
Excuse me again. But no, it comes back, like directors like John Carpenter, we mentioned, and about politics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we talking about Assault on Precinct 13. Like Carpenter, quintessential left-leaning director. Attack on everything that's like, well, nearly everything, like They Live, Escape from New York, fucking, you could say the Fog for another example of something that's maybe not political, but it's traditional values.
Yeah, John Carpenter's an interesting one. I mean, when it comes down to a lot of the directors did. I think when you talk about someone like Cronenberg, and the most political of his films was probably Videodrome, which actually has a lot of political content within it. Carpenter often went into his kind of political sort of opinions, like Where They Live and things like that. There is a heavily political kind of aspect to that particular film. George Romero, George Romero, I think is less political in terms of intent, but so much as how it kind of his stories sort of are very open to being read like that.
See, I would say Night of the Living Dead is political.
I think that was as much I don't want to say accidental. I think there is a bit of politic in it, political stuff. When it comes to Romero, I think it's much to do. He likes his microcosm, so at least he works best within a microcosm. When you look at something like Night Riders, as a for instance, which I'm in one of the rare group that thinks it's probably the one film he did that's actually better than Dawn of the Dead in many respects. Not necessarily as entertaining, but definitely a better written film. He likes to take the wider society, or at least he's been forced to, in some degree by budgetary concerns, takes a wider society and then kind of makes it into a small group, and then explores various issues, and political stuff comes out of that.
Yeah.
I think when one of the interesting comparisons I think I've ever made, if I just had to blow my own trumpet somewhat, was the Falling Down a Death Wish comparative study, which I did in response to Barry's review of Death Wish. So I took the Falling Down and I compared it to Death Wish in terms of how they handle similar subject matter, mostly regarding gun culture.
Yeah.
Because Death Wish is very much a film that kind of goes, guns are the solution, whereas Falling Down is very much the opposite. Guns and violence aren't the solution. It's the one thing that makes his life spiral into the dirt.
Yeah, it's one bad day in Falling Down compared to, Charles Bronson's character's family getting attacked, and it's circumstance rather than, society.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, we mentioned all the kind of like American politics and stuff earlier on, and those two films. I honestly, I think if you want a window into both ends of the argument, back to back in those videos, is probably a great way to sort of like. In a friendly way, or at least a palatable way, kind of understand what it is people are saying, where they're coming from. I mean, because I look at Death Wish and I go, it's an entertaining film. It's actually a very well-made film in many respects. It's actually a pretty damn good film. But I disagree with the politics of it quite vehemently. Because it is very much, it does have this rather, what's the best way to put it? It has this very kind of robust way of kind of like brushing over the problem.
Yeah, because I think, you see, it was like Charles Bronson's character didn't consider a gun at the start.
No, he gets handed it. He basically gets gifted one, doesn't he?
He's given one, as kind of, I could maybe get some revenge with this. Yeah,
I mean, he's away at a meeting and he meets that guy who kind of like goes, let's go down a shooting gallery kind of thing. And then they start talking about this stuff, and it kind of, he looks upon that as being the way of fixing the problem. It's taking the problem and putting it in his own hands. Essentially vigilante justice.
Yes.
That kind of stuff.
Its essence is.
Yeah, it's Wild West kind of justice kind of thing. And I think that's why it resonated with a lot of Americans in particular, was because it is that that call to arms is almost a genetic thing over there. It's part of the history of the country. How the West was
as well.
How the West was won, essentially. Is how it's kind of seen. People had weapons; they could look after themselves. It's a if you're being generous, it's a it's a kind of freedom-based sort of thing, individualism. To that extent is also a very very backwards kind of, very conservative, incredibly conservative kind of point of view.
But Michael Douglas's character in Falling Down is similar, I think, as well.
Yes, very similar. But
it's just a different path.
But his path leads in exactly the opposite direction. His perpetuation of violence, his trying to right the wrongs off his own back, is what ultimately.
One bad day.
Although
exaggerated to
it's
degree.
One of the funniest scenes ever, where he gets the little rocket launcher.
But it is in essence, they're both social commentaries at the time. Like, I would say, late '60s, early '70s America. Reeling on from the civil rights movement, and people thought their rights, white people thought their rights were going to be exterminated. For want of a better word.
I mean,
arm yourselves against the threat.
Yeah, I mean, with like Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that, when it comes to the political sort of content, a lot of that was kind of accidental. It actually happens a lot with George Romero's stuff, because I think it's actually one of the wonderful things about his films is that they're so kind of rich with the situation that things can be read into them. They're not explicitly sort of smacking you over the head and saying it's this, it's this, it's this. I think the whole kind of like with Dawn of the Dead, as a for instance, the idea that it's all about consumerism and that kind of stuff, is something that just sort of naturally kind of sprouted out of this location that he found.
Yeah.
It's partly in the writing. It's not entirely. A lot of Dawn of the Dead, if you read it at face value, is it's a kind of fantasy of, the end of the world has come. Where would you want to be?
Yeah, in a shopping mall or outside.
Yeah, and George Romero kind of like said that he saw these people wandering around the mall, sort of in this thrall of these things, the shiny things in the shops and all that kind of stuff, and that sort of piqued his attention. And I kind of get the feeling that some of the things that are read into his stuff are almost subconscious with him, that he didn't realise that he was doing that. Because you ever watch like interviews with him and stuff like that, things he's talking about, his old movies, and things he said as the movie was being made or just after are kind of changed from where he was like later in life. I mean, it's like with like Dwayne Jones, for instance, as a choice of the actor for Ben in Night. That was a pure accident.
Yeah.
Really, it was just like kind of like he was the best actor we knew. We got him in.
Just happened to be black.
Yeah. And then naturally, because every bugger else is as white as cream. These kind of tensions echoed what was happening in society around them.
Yeah.
And naturally, I think that sort of situational thing kind of bled into the movie, and then sort of people kind of saw that. I think they said when they were taking the film for a screening, as a for instance, they were driving it across the country for a screening somewhere, and they over the radio, I think it was Martin Luther King died or something like that. It was an event like that, and then kind of like suddenly this black character kind of had more significance within the film. And it's like the thing is, if you look at more objectively at the film and that character, he's as much an antagonist as he is a protagonist.
Yeah, I see that.
He's not.
The microcosm in the cabin.
Yeah, he's as much of a cause of the problem as anything.
Yeah.
And as a lot of people pointed out, he's actually wrong, and Harry is right. At the end of the movie. So how does he survive to the end of the movie? Well, he does exactly what Harry said they should have done about an hour ago.
But I think when you go back briefly to Dawn, I'm not the expert that you and Simon are by any means, but I do think Argento had a lot of input in terms of the consumerism as well.
I don't know about that, to be honest with you. I mean, Argento. Have you watched the Italian version?
I haven't actually. No.
I'd highly recommend you watch it. It's a very different film in some respects.
Okay.
Basically, Argento was kind of after an action movie, and that's what his cut kind of reflects. It's there's a lot of dialogue missing. There's a lot of kind of tightening up of certain scenes. The soundtrack is bumped up to a lot more Goblin. In fact, it's barely a moment where there's no Goblin playing. And weirdly they lose the helicopter zombie. That's not in Argento's cut, funny enough.
Okay.
I think Argento was after much more of a straightforward kind of splatter movie, essentially action movie. And yeah, as much as I love Argento, that is clearly the inferior cut, because I probably, I mean, I'm kind of rubbing up against George Romero's opinion in some respect. I think the Cannes cut is actually a really, really good cut.
Okay.
His theatrical version is tighter. It's a lot. It takes a bit of the lulls of the Cannes cut out, so the pacing's not quite as brisk. But I've always enjoyed the Cannes cut enough that any slows in the pace, it never really mattered. Because you get the extended more hours cut as well, which is it's messy, but it's kind of fun to see all the extra material sort of shoved in there. And we've watched it a couple of times. So
yeah, I was going to say that was about a few months back. Yeah.
But yeah, George Romero's political kind of stuff, I think he became a bit more conscious of it sort of a bit later on, but it wasn't quite so overt as someone like John Carpenter. And you look at stuff like Escape from New York, as a for instance.
Oh God, yeah.
It's a very straightforward action film in some respects, but it does have a lot of political content. They Live, again, is a very political film. Cronenberg.
President of who?
Yeah. But it's a whole kind of fascism thing, and he's sort of like, without kind of like, shifting into Antifa kind of territory, he's very much a anti kind of fascism kind of guy. You look at the bad guys in a lot of his films, and they tend to be authoritarian types. They Live, as a for instance, is kind of like
a nice example, though.
Exactly, it's essentially, it's like if you take the alien kind of aspect and sort of put it down as a minor thing, or just sideline that for the time being. You've got a commentary on media and propaganda, essentially, is what you've got with that particular film.
But as you said, taking the alien out of it, things like
yeah,
even with the sunglasses, like the subliminal advertising,
yeah. I mean, essentially, the whole
it speaks from many levels.
Yeah, the mechanism for that, for what's going on there. Why make them aliens? Well, it gives you a much wider division of them versus us. Is essentially what's that how that works as a mechanism. It's a them versus us stuff. So how do you make them the them that bigger difference? Well, you make them something completely different to you. Then they're not human. Which is a commentary in its own right.
Yes.
But it's yeah. And funny enough, it's like with Cronenberg and Videodrome. Probably his most political film.
I would argue, to an extent, Shivers as well.
Shivers, why would you say that?
Okay, I know it's a hot take.
Go on.
Right? Forgive me, so it might be a bit weird.
No.
But when you think, right, okay, they're on the island, they're exclusive in these rich apartments. Mm-hmm. Yet they get the parasite comes for them. Mm-hmm. It's exaggerating what the haves and the have-not. The have-nots haven't been affected. It's all in this apartment block.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I sort of see where you're coming from there.
I know it's probably not well explained, but
it's fine. I think there is that aspect to it, and I think that's perfectly legitimate. That there is that kind of thing, because they describe it as basically the whole hotel complex is described as the sail ship or whatever it is.
It
was basically sold as a cruise, which is an isolation sort of thing. I always thought that was kind of more of a way of having them isolated, for me.
There is that too, definitely. Yeah, because again, it's confined to that. The parasite doesn't go any further.
I mean, Videodrome itself, there is. If you look at the antagonists of Videodrome, which is like Brian Oblivion and Barry Cortex. Convex. Those two characters. Yes, it's Convex, Barry Convex. I've said Cortex, I'm thinking bloody Crash Bandicoot, am I? But those two characters are very clearly political characters. You got Convex, who's this...
Convex, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. You got Convex, who's this... very much a politician. He's that kind of corporate politics type of guy. And then you've got Brian Oblivion, who's this sort of evangelical, pseudo-religious kind of figure.
Hidden away, yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of mysterious and questionable as to his life status, to say the least.
But again another hot take maybe, but it's more the fact of the source material rather than Cronenberg's, his own idea, like the Dead Zone.
Yeah, that is. I mean,
killing Stilson.
I think with Dead Zone, that is very much a different type of film for him, simply because it's not his writing. If you know what I mean.
No, it's Stephen King's original writing.
Of course it is, yeah. So there's that aspect to it. That's an interesting film, though. I've got to rewatch it at some point. It's been a while, but yeah. But as political content goes, even that, although it features politicians, it's not quite as focused on the actual politics.
It's not blatantly obvious.
Exactly. Other than him kind of like going, this guy's going to be the next Hitler, and that's pretty much, the kind of thing that he's going for.
Just reading MD's comment, David Cronenberg's Crash Bandicoot has got the same energy as John Carpenter's Jackson Dexter. That's a good one.
Well, since the others don't follow Ben's instruction to the letter, that's what dooms them. Yes, yeah, true, potentially true, yeah. But even though they boarded up all the windows, the zombies sort of knocked it through in like about 3 minutes, and I think even Harry had kind of explained that you can't do it well enough. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. It's one of the fun things about that film is like the bastard in that, the one that you're encouraged to despise, is actually right. He turns out to be the one that actually had his head screwed on the right way.
That's it. Kieran, you're right. Martin Sheen was hilarious in The Dead Zone. He was a laughably bad villain, but
he's a real mustache twirler. But yeah. The birds are flying.
Dude uses the baby as a shield. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's bad. Like when you put it like that.
He does. It's really kind of funny.
And he played similar in Firestarter as well. Not a politician, mind, but same kind of mustache twirling villain.
It's funny. He's one of the actors that I always get a little bit surprised as being, the bad guy in any particular film. Although he's done it often enough.
Yeah, he has done it pretty. I'm still thinking of Badlands.
Harry still died in the cellar, though. Yes, he did, but that was not exactly for the. It's because he couldn't, he couldn't deal with his child. Unfortunately for him. But he was right. It was the safest place.
Oh man!
If I kicked a hornet's nest, it's like, yeah, Harry was right in Night of the Living Dead.
Not just a hornet's nest, a wasp's nest, I think, as well. It could be read so many ways, like the film.
But I think we'll wrap up at this point. I think that's probably a good place to finish. But it's been an interesting chat, so thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So, I guess we'll call it an evening there, folks, for the time being. So, have you got anything you kind of want to wrap up with, or
Um, go see Deadpool.
go see Deadpool?
No,
We
not
spent
really.
half the stream ragging on Marvel, and now we're going to tell you watch your
No,
movies though.
no, joking. No, I don't think so. No, there's not really. Just thank you for having me, and um, do it again. Hopefully sooner than this. But I know. Like I've been probably the world's worst. For nagging you with it, but it's just I enjoy doing a stream with you because, or well, when we're talking about normal stuff like this, it's totally different because it's a lot more to talk about than in film. Whereas
Yeah.
the first stream we did was about Fire Walk with Me, and we both could talk endlessly about that and probably bored a lot of people. So
Well, we could always talk about another David Lynch movie or something like that at some point.
yeah,
But yeah, so for the moment, we will say good night to you, folks. Thank you for joining. It's
good
been
night.
an entertaining one to do. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my beers and try and get. God, it's so warm in there tonight. But hopefully, it won't be too long before I do another one. Maybe a couple of weeks. I'm going to be working on the hardware review. Hopefully try and get some done before the end of the week. It's most of the way written. I've just got about maybe about another 30% more to write, and then I've got to record and edit it, which is the quicker part of it. But for the time being, thank you for joining. We'll say good evening and have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you on the next stream. So take care, folks.
So long.
Bye bye.